Hopefully this video won't age badly and everything we said won't be out of date in a couple of months. Hi, this is Editing Tina. I just want to point out that we recorded this right before it was announced that our internal tool, Copilot, will be renamed to Microsoft Scout as it goes into private preview. So in this episode, you'll hear us talk about Copilot, but just remember that this is called Microsoft Scout. I'll put all the installation and release notes for Microsoft Scout down below. And remember, when we say Copilot, we mean Microsoft Scout. Welcome back to In Our AI Era. Today, we are going to talk about something a little different. We're going to compare the two AI assistants that we've both been using for the past few weeks. It's going to be Microsoft Copilot Cowork and Copilot.
And before we go a single sentence further, it's a huge disclaimer maybe. Both of these tools are still in preview. Copilot is actually an internal Microsoft project that turned into a tool for all of us to use. So everything we are about to say is a snapshot. These products are going to change probably a lot and probably even sooner. So this is our initial reaction, not a final verdict as well.
Exactly. And Cowork is frontier. So that's also early days. So our views are our own. We'll just cover our experiences. We first have to do our AI concept of the week. And Ragnar, I'm so excited about the one that I want to share with you. I'm going to call it, or it is called Work EQ. I was listening to a podcast with an MVP named Buller, and we are actually going to interview her for our show soon. And so I was doing some research and listening to her talk, and she said something that just really resonated with me, which is that we are so focused at Microsoft on work IQ, which is this ability to connect to different systems and for agents to understand your full context, your entire role and everyone around you. But we should also remember that there is work EQ, which is what we as the humans bring to work. And work IQ can only go so far. You need to also have work EQ in the picture. And her example was if you have a credit collections dashboard, an AI might be able to say, hey, this customer is late in paying, like we will send them a collections letter. But as a human, you might have a very long relationship with this customer and know that there's something happening outside of their control. And then you would have the emotional intelligence to say, let's not send them a collection letter yet. Let's wait for them to pay because I have trust that they will pay. And I just felt what a beautiful metaphor for her to like say work IQ provided by Microsoft, work EQ provided by the people using the tools.
Okay, that's I know we have to start thinking about EQ more than we think because it's not about all conditional. Even with generative AI, we are trying to remove that hard conditioning there. So thank you, Tina. So my concept of the week is slightly different. I want to speak about how HTMLs are becoming the new markdown files for humans. So
Okay, interesting.
So Tina, I
Tell me
remember
more.
when we first started, I converted you into, hey, make sure everything's markdown files because those are easy for
Yes.
large language models to read. But then yesterday for our podcast, I sent you like a HTML report because what I'm learning now is HTML still possess the same easy way for the agent to read, but also HTML gives us that visual representation of the project that we want to do, or you can do a POC much faster through HTML thing. So I've been using a lot of HTML reports. So I want to bring that as concept of the week in our AI era. So maybe we can look back in next year and see what happened with HTML reports.
That would be very interesting. I'm a huge HTML fan because I remember in my student days, I would write HTML in Notepad. So in my exams, I had to write HTML completely from scratch with the header specification. And then you open the HTML tag, you make sure you close it all by hand. So that's how far back I know HTML. So it's going to be super interesting to see how this evolves. Let's get started on Copilot versus Cowork. Ragnar, you've been using Copilot, right? Could you describe the architecture?
Yes, the origin story, I want to start by saying that it started out of a project called Project Lobster. This is when all of OpenClaw and other things were coming up and everyone's trying to install. I think the guy's name is Omar Shaheen, who wrote this experimental Microsoft effort that he was trying to do. And now it kind of became an internal app, and then we are all using. The simplest way I would say Copilot is more like a Copilot packaged with all the local AI workbench that you require. So it does not need you to have a subscription for everything. You could add Playwright to it. So it's mostly done everything locally on your system. And the most beautiful thing I love about that, Tina, is we can use our GitHub Copilot license to log into this. I remember when OpenClaw and other things came, besides the security, it only ran mostly on cloud subscription or others, and they shut it down. So Copilot actually gives us that ability to run everything locally. And we'll get into the use cases later. But the way I really use that is my personal AI workstation. So it has memory components to it. So every time I use it, adds to the memory. But all of that memory is local to me. So it's in my own computer, it's in my own system. The other thing also it has is it has the heartbeat functionality. So every day morning, I get my email summaries. Every 4 hours, I see if something's important in my emails that I need to address. So I use Heartbeat for that. Then also in my use case, I'll share later on how it's kind of replacing my VS Code in a way. But I'm really using it mostly for skills as well. So recently we spoke a lot about skills and others. So this has skills that you can share locally as well. And I really want to know how you're using skills in your cowork as well. So this is a lot of good things that are in different pieces of the puzzle in the AI ecosystem, all of them coming together, and the model becomes the reason for that. So we can pick the model you need, and all the tools it requires are either installed or pre-installed mostly by the team. So we are using that to use locally. And I'll share in my example how I'm really using Copilot with my work IQ and other things as well.
Super interesting. I think it's also interesting that Cowork, which is also a personal assistant, is going in completely the opposite direction. So you've mentioned how skills are local, everything is local with Copilot. Cowork is not. Cowork is completely built inside the cloud. It's in a protected cloud sandbox inside M365. And so with Copilot, you can choose the model. Currently in Cowork, it's all powered by Claude. So there's probably going to be more model providers in the future, but it's kind of a different setup where you have to choose a Claude model, whereas with Copilot you have a bigger model choice, right? Like you mentioned, it's connected to GitHub Copilot. So it's also using Work IQ. So it's grounded through that. So it knows my emails, my meetings, files, all of these things. I never have to tell it anything about my work context. It knows that. And the idea is that unlike Copilot, Cowork is a bit more proactive and plan driven. So if I ask it to do something, it would devise a plan. It would show me the plan, and then it would say, yes, let's do that. And so I think that contrast between sort of a desktop app, which only works when it's running on the desktop, versus something that's in the cloud sandbox, is very interesting, and completely different wiring.
Okay. I know we created hosted agents. So it's the concept of look, every time you run Cowork, we get a hosted agent spinning and running. Um, that tells me too, one of the
Exactly.
drawbacks for me is if your machine does not have the power to run these things, then you
Yeah.
might run into the same thing where Cowork does not.
Exactly. Yes. And I think we've already touched on these agents of they connect to things, right? To files, to websites, to business applications. So let's maybe discuss a bit the difference between how they connect. You want to take a first stab at it?
Yes. So both Cowork and Copilot connect through the same protocols that we know, MCP protocols, API. So that's the standard doorway gateways to all the tool calls that we're doing outside. I've installed Playwright MCP and all the others that I need, but most of them are being pre-added now within that system. So what differs is what's on the other side of the door and how much each tool reaches for. So, Tina, I'm going to speak about the Copilot and you can maybe help with the Cowork
Okay.
thing. So, Copilot is more like open-ended in my view because it runs locally using your GitHub CLI licensing or other things that you need. So, it can plug into whatever MCP serves your need. So you can install it on your machine. It will run like that. So I've used almost all Microsoft CLIs that we can install, all the MCP servers that I need and things like that. So I've been using them to do that locally. So, and also if you want to change any commands and do any changes to those MCP or the connections, I have that ability to do that locally. So what about Cowork, Tina? How is it connecting?
So Cowork also connects through MCP servers and through some M365 integrations. So it's very grounded on the M365 ecosystem. The thing I would say that is interesting is that it's very comfortable in M365. And with that, I mean that it will basically go and run things in M365 if it deems them not dangerous. Actually, today for the first time, and I can give some examples later, but today for the first time, it asked me to allow a permission and it flagged it as medium impact or medium harmful. So it's generally much better at understanding when in M365 something might be a risky action. Whereas in Copilot, I see it more every single action, even if it just needs to check something in your calendar, it will say, hey, I need permission to check this. Cowork is a lot better at saying, hey, this is not a risky thing to do. I will just check it. But then if you wanted to message people or create new things, it will warn you. The other thing I want to mention about connections is in our previous video, we talked about Cowork plugins, which is something that's sort of specifically coming to Cowork now, step by step. And we can link that video here if anyone wants to dive deeper into Cowork and the Dynamics plugin in particular.
Okay, so the headline is same protocol but different views of it, right? So you're saying
Yes.
Cowork gives you that curated governed surface for you to use and work on, whereas Copilot gives you the ability to like build your own toolbox kind of a thing. And this reminds me of the joke Tina and I have, which is she tells me that I'll go and build something from scratch. So which is like Copilot, I'm adding my own tools. Whereas Tina is the one who introduced me to Copilot, to be honest. But Tina loves to find how to use all the things in Cowork and make them work.
So maybe I'll just say that it allows you to build your own toolbox, but in Copilot, it feels more like you're assembling a set of power tools in the sense that it's a lot less governed, right? So you can really saw your arm off if you want to with Copilot. But it's very powerful, and I think we should go into some experiences that we've had, kind of, or the how it feels to use it, because I think that's an interesting part. So I don't know. Let me maybe explain how I feel about using Cowork, and then you could do Copilot. So with Cowork, what I like is it feels very deliberate. I mean, because it plans the outcomes, it will tell me what it will do, and it will always sort of open up a little dialogue that says, here's what I'm using for input, and here's what I generated as output. So it feels safe. I can see what it's doing. And yeah, because it plans and asks me for approvals before it acts, I kind of feel that I trust it in a way more than Copilot. How do you feel about the way that Copilot do things?
I trust my Copilot, but sometimes sometimes I need to still be that layer. And Cloudpilot, in a way, it's opposite, right, Tina? Because it gets invoked mostly through the models. So I know it uses the skills we create and all the things that we have added in terms of MCP power and tools. But model routes the skills for it. All the governance is happening at the model level. So it feels more like an improvisational thing. So it improves every time it finds like a hurdle. It does not have the structure in the plan that you're saying. The way I do plans is, Tina, I ask it to create me a plan. I review the plan and
Okay.
then I say submit. But most of the time, as it has memory, it's actually learning how I do things, and hopefully, I'll convert this into a toolbox that I need. But from what you're sharing, Tina, what I'm learning is it's the trade of that governance. That is what's giving us that comfort. Cowork gives you the paper trail by default. The harness is also audit trailed by your organization. While as Copilot gives me the speed and reach I need, maybe, but it's like living on the claw side of it. It's like open claw and doing things the way you need.
Yes. And yeah, I think Copilot is so much fun. One of the things that I would mention, and I hope that this finally goes live with when they release it to the public, is that it can have different voices and styles. So, for example, you could put it like Marvin, the depressed robot in Hitchhiker's Guide, or in my case, I put it to Jarvis, who is Tony Stark's fictional assistant in the Avengers, and that meant that from the beginning it called me sir. Right, so I told it, "Don't call me sir," so it started calling me madam. It's kind of just like fun. I've since changed it a bit so that it's a bit more personal to me and it doesn't call me madam anymore. But I think that's kind of an interesting thing about Copilot, that it feels so personal, whereas I feel Cowork feels a little bit more business-like, right? I'm sure you can personalize it, but you would have to like really work on it to remember to call you specific things or to do things. I think I have told it 10 times. I'm talking about Cowork. I have to call Cowork 10 times not to add EM dashes to any writing, and it still gets that wrong. So it just feels a little bit more like it's a personal assistant, but it's not my personal assistant. Whereas Copilot is definitely unique to me.
Makes sense. For me, I feel the same. Like I love using Cowork, I love using Copilot, and for me, the thing has been all about like which use cases and when I use that is might be something fun we can talk to, So maybe I'll go first with a couple of my use cases on where I'm using Copilot only. So, for example, one of the things I've learned is a lot of my friends and other colleagues, we're all trying to get into VS Code now. And it's not the easiest experience. So in that case, what I kind of done was, what I did was I took the users who didn't want to use VS Code, downloaded and cloned the thing through Copilot, and they're able to run the projects, Tina. They're able to do all the things easily. So it kind of showcases the power of the agentic side of Copilot, helping you to drive through that code or run through that automatically. I know in GitHub CLI, we can say go to terminal, enable the auto mode, but those are all extra steps that a regular user who didn't want to touch code can use Copilot for. So it enables the easy way for us to vibe and try to come up with even as simple as HTML report. So we can do
Love
that.
that. Yeah.
And the second one I'm thinking is, I know we joke it internally, but we travel a lot, so every time we travel and come back, we have like receipts from the hotel, receipts from all these other places, Uber rides. Though everything's in my emails because I get all my reports in the emails, they are not easily for you to format them the way our system needs it. So the way I use Copilot now is I kind of trained it on the steps that I do. And like you mentioned, Copilot has access to anything on my behalf in a way. So it's able to do that, and it's able to fetch all the emails that I have, all the numbers in it. And then it's actually doing a smart thing. It creates a report the way I will be importing into my system. So it creates me that Excel report of the way that my system can intake. So I can take the Excel and then import into my expense management with day line items and everything, especially the hotel room billing. Like every day you get like one tax, one this, one that. So all of that billing is converted and created into a report with Copilot much easier. And all I gave it was some emails and some skills on how do we do it. And the next thing you know, it created the whole report for me.
That's incredible and such a time saver, right? Because no one wants to do expense reports. That's such a boring task.
Awesome. And what's your use case, Tina? How are you using? I know we are using both of them, but I want to know your Cowork use case.
Yes, so for Cowork, I tend to focus on things that are work IQ related, so things like slides, or if I want to organize my thoughts based on messages or documents that are in Office apps. So I think I'll give some examples in a second, because I am now starting to try the same use cases in both to see which happens or what changes are between them. The thing that I don't try in Cowork, that I only try in Copilot, are things that are really within my file system, so things that are local. So for example, I had a hard disk from 2011 which I wanted to clear out because I wanted to use it to format a laptop, and it had 500 gigs of old files that I haven't looked at in 15 years, and I didn't want to delete them because there could be interesting photos or things, but I also wanted to clear out the hard drive without copying everything to my laptop. So I asked Copilot to look at it, and it found so many files that I definitely don't need anymore, like old executable files, this was in a time when you were like downloading fonts from the internet and saving them locally. So all of these things it just cleared out, and it just kept the photos and the interesting things. And it also gave me reasons why it thought files were unimportant or important. So that's not something Cowork could ever do because it lives in the cloud. And this was a sort of local thing. I want to give you an example of something that I tried both in Copilot and Copilot this week that was just shocking for many different reasons. So the use case is I have a file with a list of people and I want to ask them a question in Teams, but I don't want to ask them directly. I want to ask them with like someone else from our team. So it needs to create a 3-person chat, me, the other person working on this project, and then the person in my Excel list. And I trained Copilot to do this. So it would open a browser, open Teams, create a new chat, add these people manually, post the message that it should post, rename the chat to the project name. And then I also wanted it to not mention people with surname. So it would then edit the message to mention them without their surname. And this was so cute watching this, right? Like it opens the browser, it creates the chat. It's like watching a toddler takes its first steps. I'm so proud of it, being able to create a Teams channel, a Teams chat. And so I was very happy with how it did. I have hundreds of people in this file, so it would take me weeks for it to create all of these chats. And so I thought, oh, maybe I just try it in Cowork. Cowork created this team chat with one of the people in my example so quickly that I basically didn't notice it happen. It said, I've created the chat. And I thought that was too quick. It didn't do it. But it did do it. It created the chat with the people instantly. The only thing is it added the wrong person as my second coworker. So it had the person in the file, me, and then some random person that has the same name as the person on our team because it's a common name. And so both of them had advantages and disadvantages. Cowork was much faster, but a little bit less accurate. And so I think the key of all of these things is that you just have to try and see what works. And in this case, I could tell Cowork not to add the wrong people to the chat. In some other cases, you'll have to do other experimenting to see what works.
Awesome. The one thing I also was thinking when you said that, was I use the heartbeat functionality. So
Yes.
so one of the things what I do there is every 4 hours it runs through my Teams and Outlook and gives me a highlight of what's happening, what are the highlight of important things. Did my boss ask for something or did someone else ask for something? So it gives me a report of every 4 hours and what are the things that I have need to respond to. And that's why Heartbeat is also easy for me to just schedule something locally that only works when I want it to work online. The other thing also we can share is Cowork is mostly on the cloud, which gives you some couple of good things, which is you don't have to keep your system online. You can schedule tasks to run even when your system is off. But for me, it's not about that one. It's like every time the system has to be on in order to even run the heartbeat and other things you want to use.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's an interesting differentiation that it has to be on. The other thing that I haven't tried yet, but this is next on my list, is to try collaborating with people. You've already mentioned that you can use Copilot to collaborate with GitHub. So it doesn't have collaboration out of the box, but you could connect it to something that collaborates. What I think Cowork can do is to have a workspace where two people work on at the same time, and then to prompt it together to share a file. So now I'm manually creating these Teams chats for this project and adding my collaborator. Maybe I would love to have him just in Copilot, Copilot Cowork, working on this together.
So I think that would be a great way even for us to collaborate together using Cowork to make these episodes, right?
Yes,
So we have that
exactly.
agent
Yes,
behind the scenes for us. So
yes,
Tina, for takeaways, at least right now, Cowork and Copilot aren't real competitors in my view. They are two different bodies for two different shapes of work. With the examples that you gave me and then the examples that we are sharing, we are using one for different aspects of it. And like Tina is also trying in both places to see which works the best, I guess. So
yes,
if
yeah,
so, in a way, if your work lives in M365, you need a paper trail and you need to understand what are the enterprise level governances that are put. They go into Cowork. And if your work lives on your desktop and you want to do things locally and you want to share all your memory, in my view, Copilot makes most sense. And also, you can add things that are maybe in preview yet, or if you're testing some new tools. With AI, we are all trying to do the latest things. So you can install those MCP servers and others into Copilot, whereas for Cowork, you need to wait for your organization.
Absolutely. Then, and the next thing that I want to try too, besides the collaboration, is I want to ask Copilot to ask Cowork to do things. It's clear that Copilot is a lot more reliable with creating Teams chats for me, but Cowork is faster. So I think I'm going to set up something so that Copilot just pings Cowork and say, "Hey, I need you to create this Teams channel," and then it can, check that it's adding the right people. So it's going to continue to be experimentation. Like we said, it's preview, so both of them are going to change in the next months, especially Copilot because it's really just an internal preview to Microsoft. But we're super excited for it to come and for everyone to see it. So hopefully this video won't age badly and everything we said won't be out of date in a couple of months.
That's the reason for our AI era, Tina, right? So we can come back and see how we were good or how much of our predictions were right. So we are in that AI era.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. So thanks everyone for listening along to us explaining these two tools, and we'll see you in the next episode.
See you in the next one. Bye.